Good afternoon, Guyana, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Recount Update. Today is day 30. My name is Hugh Todd, and joining us today is Gail Teixeira, PPPC executive and long-standing member. Also, we'll have a brief appearance from Mr. Richard Raghunandan, who is a PPPC NDC councillor, Ogle. Thank you, madam and sir, for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all your viewers.
Thank you. I want to begin by asking you to give us a quick overview of the PNC-led coalition government. You would have been in the fight alongside Dr. Chedi Jagan for democracy in Guyana, and you understand the DNA well of the PNC. So I wanted to give the viewers your understanding of the PNC based on their actions when in and out of office, more so when they're in office. Everything that we've seen so far following the no confidence motion back in December 2018, and everything that they've done throughout the process and looking at how they're behaving now in this recount process. The state apparatus means a lot to them. Please give the public your view of the PNC as a party that believes in party above state.
Well, I think that for many people of my generation that lived through the PNC rigging of election after election between 1968 and 1985, we thought with the first free and fair elections of 1992 that those days were over and we were building a new Guyana, a democratic Guyana. And certainly what we're seeing now is that with the PNC getting into office in 2015, we've seen a lot of the reversals of the gains that we made, and a lot of our fight as a PPPC and a parliamentary opposition has been to try to preserve those democratic gains. And just for the viewers, I mean, the rigging of the elections between 68 and 1985 were just raw, brazen, stuffing ballot boxes, the military taking them and having them packed somewhere else. The election rigging this time is different in that the rigging has taken place with a cabal in the PNC and cooperation from GCOM, key persons in the GCOM machinery. And so they haven't had to stuff ballot boxes. What they've done is use the returning officer Mingo, Myers, Lowenfield, and others, as well as Alexander, Vincent Alexander, and the PNC rigging executive to alter the results. So you have an election on March 2nd, which everyone accepted was peaceful and that were in accordance in the main with all the electoral rules. What has happened is that, and so the problem as former Prime Minister Golding said, who headed the OAS mission here, was that he had never seen such a transparent effort
Yes.
in any of his experiences by election monitoring, to such a transparent effort to alter the results of the election. So he's clearly saying the election day and the tabulation of the results were fine up to a certain point when Region 4 started to be done March the 4th and 5th. And so we're seeing what I think the PNC has been absolutely petrified about, and that's why they went to all these lengths to prevent the recount, was that they knew that once the recount started and once we got to Region 4 once again, that it would reveal Mingo's fraud, the attempt by Mingo as the key person, but not the only person, to steal the vote of the Guyanese people, to steal the will and their right to vote for a government of their choice. And so they have been trying to postpone this issue. And I think we're now at a really critical junction of the recount where the 9 regions are finished basically, and that we're back to Region 4, and we're back to now where the exposure is taking place of Mingo's fraud. So in East Bank, the party was able to show the number of places where The votes, the statements of poll and the statements of Recount matched completely, but they didn't match with Mingo's spreadsheet. And we are seeing that again today. And in particular, I think our guest here is from the same neighborhood as me. We're in the same NDC.
Yes.
And so we're seeing the revelation of Pindola, Ogle, Pindola Nursery School, which is predominantly PPP, where 108 ballots were not stamped, 102 were for the People's Progressive Party, and one, I think, for APNU. And therefore, we've lost those votes. We also then see at Plaisance, the stations in Plaisance, which were several, that Mingo's spreadsheet has come to light in the number of the way in which he inflated the votes of the APNU, although they won most of the stations or all the stations in the Plaisance Good for Acting area. And so this is all being exposed in real time, an immediate time. And this is what I think the PNC did not want to happen.
Okay.
And so today we're really seeing, I think the next 3 days are crucial. And we've seen simultaneously with that, the PNC upping the hysteria. They're going berserk right now. They're going absolutely berserk on the social media because they know that this is the end game. This is now where we're coming to the end. And they know that they will have great difficulties, stopping the process at this point.
Okay, thank you, Gail, for that opening. We want to give our viewers an understanding to the depth at which the APNU FC has gone to confuse the process and to give their supporters information which they think can confuse them and derail the process. With us, we have Richard, who is an NDC councillor, lives in Ogle. They have alleged that he is deceased, but here he is. He's alive and well, and he's willing to let the people of Guyana understand the extent to which the APNU FC has gone to try to confuse this process. Richard, give us your experience and how has this affected you personally in terms of your understanding of democracy and the PNC trying to deny you of that right that you have here in Guyana?
Actually, when I heard this morning, I started to laugh because I never expected something. I mean, you're hearing about it every day, right? You've been reading about it on Facebook, but then when reality check, you're on the list. So when I heard it this morning, I couldn't even believe, well, hey, I am dead. How can I be dead and I'm sitting, I voted and now you're claiming that I'm dead. I really don't understand what is happening. Whatever they're trying to do or whatever gimmick they're trying, I hope it comes to an end very fast because it's really telling a toll on us in every area of every Guyanese life. It's telling a real serious toll because it's been 90 plus days now since this election has happened and nothing, we cannot come to any settlement on this whole election thing. And it's really ridiculous. I mean, other countries can have their elections and they can have their results and move forward, but we can't. And it's not healthy for the children or the younger folks who will be voting on the next election. What would they do? How can they look at it and say, man, I'm going to vote? I've talked to many of them and they say, I don't want to vote. When that time comes, I'm not going to vote because of this that they're seeing. It's not a good example. And I hope that this can come to an end very fast.
Yes, thank you for that, Richard. I mean, the viewers out there and those who are experiencing this as it unfolds, it will have an effect on your psyche. And many persons would have mentioned before that is what the PNC has done to Guyana. It has really affected the psyche of people where you're fearful of exercising your franchise and you're fearful of the process itself. Comrade Gail, you know all too well that we've had a free, fair, and credible election. Everyone who participated attested to that. the recount process started, and the PNC-led coalition went about trying to pull all kinds of stunts, all kinds of shenanigans, trying to derail and confuse and frustrate the process. From the dead to those who would have migrated, talking about unstamped ballots, poll books being missing. They've been throwing every single thing at GCOM and alleging that the chief architect behind this process is the People's Progressive Party Civic. Astonishing. In collusion with GCOM. So they're saying that the same GCOM that they were saying that was independent, had constitutional powers, and they believed in, and this is coming from David Granger himself, they're the same ones now trying to discredit GCOM and trying to show the people of Guyana that the People's Progressive Party Civic is culpable. Comrade Gail, please respond.
I think that the desperation of the PNC to hold on to power, this is where you started the program, that the PNC in the days before 92 didn't give a hoot about what happened to the Guyanese people once they were in power. And because we kept winning election after election, they knew that they would probably not get into power again. In 2015, they got into power by a hairbreadth of 4,500 odd votes, less than a seat in the National Assembly. But they got into office, and they know now that that's the end for them. They're not going to get into office this time. They are therefore, first of all, manufacturing. They first of all said the election results were fine, because remember, I think there were 2 or 3 times when Granger was supposed to be sworn in between March the 6th and March the 13th, and then March the 14th, that all these swearing in ceremonies were being prepared. In fact, on Lamaha Street, they had a big tent where they had music, and they were preparing for the swearing in. So that was fine with them until, of course, the recount started. And as you said, they manufactured all sorts of things. The issue of the poll books not being in the ballot boxes does not affect the vote, does not account the count. The ones that do is at the unstamped ballot boxes, ballots. And that is an issue that GCOM should have ruled on long before and not wait till now. But they've been manufacturing all the time people who have migrated. And I know from my comrades who are in the recount that the behavior of APNU, they walk in and they spew out about 50 names. In one case, I think about 90, serial numbers. And then the whole workstation has to then now check the list to make sure which of those people have voted and which have not. So this is wasting time. So the first part was delay and creating this aura of all these people being migrated. They then have been forced now to produce evidence of some kind to substantiate their claims. And of course, that is being thrown to the wind, because the allegations, for example, in Region 7 of 22 people who had migrated, we've been able to go to people and have videos showing that they're very much in Bartica. They haven't left Bartica for years, and they're still there. Some may have gone in the bush and come back out. And in every area, Region 5, Region 6, Region 2, Region 3, we've been able to prove that. They're now moved to the point that exacerbating all the different totals. So they, for example, if they object in a particular station that the poll book was there and it had 200 voters, they then now add those 200 voters if all those voters votes were not credible, which is total, it's mischief of the highest order, it's dishonesty of the highest order. So they come up with these huge numbers of 91,000 votes and so on. Absolutely absurd, including when they talked about the discipline services vote, which I think we've answered correctly and adequately, but I'll just quickly go that again. The claim that all these members of the discipline forces votes were not stamped and therefore their votes didn't count is totally fallacious. In fact, in the APNU own documents, which they've been posting up on social media, they said there were 40 ballots that weren't stamped. Now, clearly you can't tell which was disciplined forces and which was not. But when
Exactly.
so when you go around saying disciplined forces, which is about 7 or 8,000 votes were not counted, this is absurd in their own reckoning. So they're totally dishonest. And what they're trying to do, Hugh, is they're trying to create an aura to one, say that the elections, they started out with using the word anomaly. Then they moved to irregularity. Then they've changed the word again to fraud. And so, and then they're saying that the results last night are not credible, and they're calling for the election, the 20 elections to be nullified and to have fresh elections. This is absolutely dangerous and would put us into such constitutional crisis.
Yeah.
I don't think no one would know what to do. And so, but they're using this to incite their members. Herman apparently had a press conference or something earlier, a little while ago, just before we went on the air. And basically he's whistling to his supporters that they have they've been disenfranchised, that the elections have to be thrown out, and really saying to the supporters that they're the victims of this conspiracy, as you said. We all know that GCOM, the hiring practice of GCOM, have been highly discriminatory. And in fact, we've gone to the Ethnic Relations Commission on this. And so who are the PPP members of staff in GCOM? I don't know, but this is what they're trying now to say. All it has to do with that, they're going to lose power, and they're going to lose power for a long time, because even their own supporters who, you know, went to the polls honestly and voted for their party, which is their right, have been offended, many of them embarrassed and offended by the behavior of APNU at this point. So they know that this is the end game. If they don't put on this last hurrah and try to create issues and try to create trouble, that they're going to be out of power for a long time. They've disgraced themselves, they've embarrassed their party. In fact, they've hurt their party irreparably for a long time to come, and they know it. But this is the dangerous game that APNU is playing. And that's why I said in the beginning, the next 3-4 days are absolutely critical to make sure that the recount and the results of recount are what is declared. And I think APNU is trying to frighten and threaten Claudette and threaten other people so as to try to get them to bend to their will. There's nothing in the Constitution that allows you to nullify the election results. There has to be an election results. There's nothing in law or Constitution that says that the election results or any election can be nullified. So clearly there has to be a declaration. Secondly is that all these claims and allegations by the APNU has to go into election petition. That's the only way to deal with them. And as you know, in 97, there was an election petition brought by the PNC. 2001, there was an election petition brought by Joe Hamilton, who's now with us. But at that time, he was with the PNC. Each time the election petitions have been heard, and there have been results from that. 2015, we went for an election petition after our requests for recount were denied, both in a number of regions as well as with GCOM as a last resort. And so we accepted the results. We know that we felt that we were cheated out of a number of votes. We felt that there were things that happened in the polling station that affected our results. And we went to election petition. Regrettably, as of now, and I just want to add for the viewer, the reason why the case hasn't been heard is the following, and we have to remember when we talk about Lowenfield. We brought an election petition in accordance with the law and the Constitution to do with the 2015 elections. The matter went before the then Chief Justice, Mr. Ian Chang. Mr. Lowenfield, in this is which GCOM was being called on by the PPPC to be part of the whole thing in terms of they have to defend their case, whether they held it, whether what they did was right or wrong. Ironically, Lowenfield, as a chief elections officer, takes a lawyer, I believe it was Rosedale Ford, to defend him And when Ian Chang rules in February 2016, that despite the claims by Mr. Lowenfield as against GCOM, saying that the case should not be heard, Lowenfield went to the court to fight against the case being heard. And it cost millions to GCOM without GCOM, the commission, agreeing that this expenditure should come from the GCOM budget. So they argued that the case should be thrown out, it should be dismissed. There was no issue to do with the 2015 elections, and that the petition was wrong.
Yes.
Ian Chang ruled before he retired in February 2016 that the petition was in order and it should be heard. As soon as Ian Chang retired, Mr. Lowenfield went back to the courts to appeal the Chief Justice ruling. And again, he hired Royce Ilford, and as of today, the case has not been heard. It's before the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal, in terms of Lowenfield appealing Chief Justice ruling that the case should be heard. Okay. And that is why I want people to remember Lowenfield's role in 2015 and his role in blocking an election petition from being heard. And the role of the judiciary, for whatever reason, not hearing an election petition and not hearing his appeal against the Chief Justice expeditiously.
Okay.
And that will be uncovered in time, but it just shows Lowenfield's hand in the 2015 and in the 2020 elections. And he certainly wasn't PBP.
Yes, I know that for sure. As we're on that, and we're talking about shifting narrative, we know, looking at the PNC-led coalition, they have been shifting the narrative from post-March 2nd to date. They're the ones who are trying to find a solution that will suit them and not focusing on the will of the people. And that is the nature of the PNC, in whatever shape or form they present themselves. But what I want to show the viewers today is the graph of several graphs of, or charts of, the numbers coming out of GCOM, the SORs compared to the SOPs and Minga's bloated and manufactured figures, to give them an insight of the continuity in terms of the scale of Mingo's fraud, which has still not gotten any attention from GCOM or the APNU AFC, and we know why. So let's just go through the graphs briefly, or tables, I should say. Yeah. So the first one you'll see in the second to last column, looking at Mingo's figure, we have 372, and look at inflation. He manufactured 101 votes in favor of the APNU. And if you look at the other contesting parties, 0. So clearly, all of Mingo's fraudulent numbers speak to his allegiance to the APNU FC for a victory in these elections. If we go to graph table 2, we see an inflation of 54. Nothing to the other parties, so clearly we know where his interest was concentrated on, giving more votes to the APNU AFC so that they can clinch a victory fraudulently. Graph 3, this is, mind you, this is for today, so far, because we're on region 4, and we'll see more and more of Mingo's fraudulent declarations popping up as we wind down to the conclusion. 801, 56, 70. These are numbers that were just plucked out of nowhere. There's no source document because, as we know, they have never produced their SOPs. So these are numbers that were just manufactured out of thin air. The other 70, I think we have a few more. Just bear with me. So we have a few more, but in the interest of time, this is what we're seeing. We're providing credible and verifiable data that can stand up to scrutiny. in the court of law. This is how we operate as a political party, in the interest of the people. Why is GCOM not giving any attention to Mingo's scale of fraud? And should we be concerned coming towards the end of this process, knowing that the people of Guyana are expecting a declaration and a new government to be formed immediately? Colonel Gail.
I mean, clearly, we have been expecting to find these things in the statements of poll and the statements of recount. That's why we wanted a statement of recount, because we wanted the recount, because we knew that Mingo had inflated Region 4 votes for APNU by, I think it was almost 20,000 votes, and also decreased ours. And so far in, I think, 92 boxes, just 92 boxes. Remember, Region 4 has 879 boxes, if my memory is right. That just in 92 boxes, they inflated the APNU-AFC by 4,867 votes. This is Mingo's famous spreadsheet. And so APNU got in the 92 boxes, according to Mingo, 16,061 votes, whereas in actual fact, their actual vote was 11,284. And then with the PPP, they took away 733 votes from us. And this is just Mingo's spreadsheet that we're talking about. So that these are issues that, as you said, are fact-based and we can prove because the statements of recount are matching the statements of poll. Only when there are invalid votes that are checked and found to be are valid and they are added to the respective political parties. In fact, in Region 7, we got additional votes because of that same thing where invalid votes, rejected votes were checked and were found to be valid. And so only those minor differentiations of a 4 or 5 votes here in a number of places. And so the issue that what the PNC has done, and we say APNU AFC is PNC, basically the other parties are done, finished. WP is finished. And I believe the AFC is finished. They're just crushed into the ground. They're a bunch of mooks. They couldn't stand up for democracy, and they've let the PNC dominate them and basically crush them under their feet. And I think their political future is dead. And it's unfortunate that there are people, some people in the AFC who are actually genuine people who are concerned about Guyana. But the PNC has done this. But the issue is that they have not just corrupted GCOM, they've also corrupted the police force. When the APNU goes to, as the party, not as a government, goes to the police immigration and says, here are some names, give me some names or give them a list and say, are these people in the country or not? The immigration provides that to APNU. APNU then writes the chairman of GCOM and says, here is a list of 207,000 people who happen to not be in the country at the time. The Claudette then sends it to the same origin where it came from, the Commissioner of Police Immigration Office. They then check and said, no, 172 people were not in the country on election day. We have proved of that list of 172, hundreds of names, many names that are real, are here, haven't left Guyana for years, who are still here. And then what is the response of the police? Instead of saying, well, something must have gone wrong, we have to investigate this, what the police says is, well, these people must have entered the country illegally. And I really believe the Commissioner of Police should resign in embarrassment that he has lost the respect of the people of this country. How can the Commissioner of Police of this country and the police force are expected to be professional? They're not expected to be loyal to the government of the day. They're loyal to, and not to the ruling party. They're loyal in terms of professionalism to those who are in government. But that does not mean paramountcy of the party like in the old Burnham days. This is unacceptable. And the fact that the Commissioner of Police, by producing these 172 names that were not in the country, and in fact are being proven over and over by people standing in front of a camera and say, I'm here, here's my passport, here's my ID, I left, I came back, I was here for election day. that is showing that either the immigration system has been totally corrupted, or that the police and elements in the police force, certainly not all, but elements in the police force have been taken over politically by the party on partisanship and instead of professionalism. The police should be apologizing right now that there must have been some mistake. They will investigate it of how this happened. But now saying to people, no, the reason why you're finding people is they illegally entered Guyana. That is an insult to every Guyanese. And so I believe the immigration issue has proven to be a total fiasco on the part of both the PNC and the police force, the immigration department. The second issue is when you look at that list of 172, you and I may have names that just have a first name and a surname. But repeatedly in that list, there are people on that list who, when you go into the database of the official list of electors, you'll find 5, 4, 7, 10, 35 persons with the same name, because you don't have them. You don't have the middle name. You don't have the middle name. So how did the police force and the immigration department know that, okay, Gail Teixeira only has, that's all my name. I have no middle name.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Hugh, if you have a middle name.
I have a middle name, yes.
So if I'm looking for Hugh Todd and I put a punch in Hugh Todd, you're supposed to be migrated according to the police immigration.
Yes.
And I come up with 3 different Hugh Todds. How do I know which one it is? How do the police know which one it was to put on that list? Particularly with some of the Indo-Guyanese names.
Yes.
And the fact that the majority of the list are Indo-Guyanese names is also offensive. It's also offensive because it deliberately looks at a particular ethnic group to be targeted to disenfranchise them. The second issue has to do with the actual claim by the PNC that people have migrated and therefore they're off the list. There is no way at this point that these people actually voted or didn't vote. The claims that all these people are out of the country. In the case of Adla Bino, which was on the list of the police.
Yes, that's interesting.
I know young Adla Bino personally. And I know the family background he comes from. How does one prove that Adla Bino or someone voted for Adla Bino on election day? How do you know that? Because you don't have the list. The list have all been packed up according to Yolanda Ward. They've all been packed up. So this aura they're creating of here a young man and he's told that his name is on a list and he was out of the country, so someone voted for him. He doesn't know if someone voted for him. GCOM doesn't know that and can't prove it either.
Yes.
And so the issue of a claim like this is to cause, it's doing smoke and mirrors. It's creating issues. It's unfortunate that young Bino was put in that predicament, because I know he's a decent young man and stuff like that. But that clearly he was put up to do it by a number of elements. I would know who they are, to make it seem as if someone voted for him. We don't know that someone voted for him at all, whether there was a tick next to his name at all. And clearly with GCOM, it is not their mandate to now go and check that if Bino go into the ballot box, go back into the ballot box and see if Bino name was ticked off. That is not the remit of GCOM. GCOM is there to manage the elections, to count and make sure that the system is free and fair and transparent, and that the results are clear for those who won. And the seats are allocated based on the winnings of the various political parties. So you'll know who's getting how many seats in parliament, how many geographic seats, and how many seats in the regions. Yes. That is all GCOM's work is. It is not there to play a police role of investigating, nor is it a judicial role of ruling on the credibility or non-credibility of elections. That is not its role. And the PNC is putting pressure on GCOM to do that. And I think we have to remember there's a risk not to play it up, but I think that's what in the battle to amend the order, that's why Alexander and them fought against our motion, which was to to remove the declarations of March the 6th and 13th, which were never examined by the commission in the first place, but to move them off the table and declare them null and void. We've started all over again in a new recount. The fact that the chairman refused to accept our motion to do so and supported Alexander and others to put in abeyance.
Yeah.
And that is what I think the PNC is playing on, that those results are in abeyance. And so although they're saying that everything's bad about the results, that they still have that as a plan B in their pocket. And so they're putting a lot of pressure on the chairman and so forth. And that's why I said but clearly the observers are watching this, not just CARICOM.
Yes.
The other observers are watching this. OAS has 2 representatives here, but the OAS is still monitoring the elections in
Yes.
Guyana, although they're not here. The Commonwealth is doing the same thing, although they're not physically here. The CARICOM is here. They have 3 persons who have really been stretched out past 25 days, and I want to thank them for standing by our right as a people to have free and fair elections and transparent elections, and that they've stayed with us even though it's COVID-19 and their families are left behind, etc. So we want to appreciate the fact that they've stayed throughout the process. And then we have also the European Union. All these bodies are monitoring. The local observers are still monitoring. The private sector and other observers are still observing what's going on. And so for them to try at this, nth hour, to try to do things like what they're talking about, nullify the elections, they're not credible, and that we need to go to fresh elections, is more an indication, I believe, of the desperation of the APNU, AFC, PNC. And I don't believe that they will succeed. I don't believe
Certainly
that.
not.
They will try, they're confusing their members and their supporters. And that's clearly their tactic. The PNC has always done it every election. From 92 onwards, they've always tried to confuse their supporters. The problem with their supporters is that they're being terribly impacted by COVID-19, economically, as all Guyanese are, and that also since the election, really nothing's working.
True.
And so just like every Guyanese, whether they voted PPP, Change Guyana, LPJ, whoever, APNU, AFC, everybody's impacted, and everybody is really saying it is time for us to get the results.
Enough is enough. Yes.
And let's get on with our country. And so even the APNU supporters are tired. They just want, okay, just let's get the government in. We need services to be restored. We need to get a budget. We need to get back on the road with our businesses, etc. And so I think that they're going to fail in trying to instigate their supporters in any way.
Yes, I agree with you totally. Colonel Gail, thank you very much for your insights and your thoughts and your comments. We are winding down. We expect a new government soon, and we have confidence that GCOM is going to do the right thing and let the will of the people prevail so that we can have our democracy restored. Thank you very much for listening for today's segment, and do join us at 8 p.m. this evening for another 5 p.m. for another edition of Recount Update. Take care.
Thank you very much, Hugh. Thank you very much, Hugh, for having me. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.